part 8 was going to continue to be about going out and exploring different worlds in the astral plane. But what I decided to do was I decided to change things up with part 8 a little bit, simply because I was giving it some thought, and I wanted to actually talk about another thing that you can do besides exploring different worlds. Now, don't get me wrong, exploring different worlds, doing all those things, I'm gonna continue to talk about exploring different worlds and all the other things that you can do. But I wanted to take a moment in part 8 to talk about something else, and something that touched me deeply at the time. Now, this is an experience that I shared in a previous video, but I wanted to talk about it again here in this series. Sometimes, I have an experience. All my experiences are extremely interesting, whether it be the astral plane, astral projection, or the beyond body. All of these experiences are extremely interesting, but sometimes I have an experience where I just want to live it over and over again, and I do that by sharing those experiences or talking about them. And this was an amazing experience simply because it was, I believe, the first time I assisted or helped another spirit being, a spirit being that did not have a body. This being, I believe, had passed away. But let me start at the beginning of this experience. And again, some of you will recognize it because I've talked about it in a previous episode. But I came out, and on this particular night when I astral projected, I came out with the thought of helping someone, and I requested this from my guides. I basically came out thinking, I want to help another spirit being. I want to do something. Now, I wasn't sure what that meant, what that was going to look like. What was it going to look like to help a spirit being at this point? I had just explained to my guides that that's what I wanted to do. So as soon as I came out, within the blink of an eye, I was in a house that had suffered a horrific fire. In fact, I remember a few things. I remember I was floating through this house. I remember that the furniture and everything else was still smoldering. Didn't look like furniture. It looked like it was just burned out. It was burned up. And I was in this kitchen. And as I moved, I could feel my guide's arms around me. And now, again, I've talked about this before, but there is such a deep comfort that I feel when my guide is there holding on to me, when I can feel those arms that are there. And I know, that if anything happens, they got my back, and I feel extremely, extremely protected when that is the case. So my guide was basically guiding me, literally guiding me through this house, holding me. And I was just kind of looking around. I was taking it all in. I realized that this house, whatever, kind of fire it was a horrible fire. And at one point, I began to hear this sound. It reminded me of the sound that researchers pick up when they're recording whale song or whales when they're in the ocean. That's what it sounded like to me in the very beginning. It's the first thing I thought about when I heard that particular sound. It sounded like a whale. And I was thinking, what is that? Part of me was thinking that, but there was some part of me, by the way, there was some part of me that had an understanding that this was a being that was crying out. I don't know how that is, but I had that understanding somehow. Some part of me did, but most of me was like, I don't know what that sound is, but I felt secure because my guides were holding on to me. Now, at one point we stopped, and when we stopped, I noticed that there was a man that was cooking on a stove. It looked like it was brand new at this point. A stove that had obviously had looked burned out, completely done for when I had seen it the first time. And then when I saw him, he was cooking right there with the stove as if it was, a nice stove. It was whole, and he was making something. He was cooking. And I was just looking at this being, and I was thinking, wow, okay. And then this being started telling me about how he felt. Now, I don't remember much about the way that he looked, but I remember what he told me. And what he told me was, since he had passed away, since he had died, he felt as if he had no substance, as if he didn't really matter anymore since he was gone. And from somewhere, I don't know where, this information just kind of flowed through me. I looked at him and I stepped right up and I just said, look, I said, right now, you have a deep, deep substance. You have so much substance to you, and you are more real at this point. You matter more at this point than you could ever understand. And after I said this, after I said that this being mattered, after I said that this being still has substance, I believe, and it seemed to me, that this really did help this being. So in that moment, I was able to help this being to feel better. Now, I do believe the conversation went on, but as I tell you in so many of my episodes, I don't retain a whole lot. I retain sort of the big picture and, some of the major things that I see or I talk about with other beings or whatever. But I have to tell you that what I believe is that I was able to assist this spirit being, which is what I wanted to do when I came out in the first place. I ended up going back to my body shortly after that. But what I hope that I was able to help him, and that if his desire was to cross over from that point, cross over, go into the light, whatever, from where he was at that moment, then that's great. That's a wonderful thing. I mean, it is obviously up to the spirit being what they're going to do at that moment. But what I hope for is that regardless of what this being decided to do, that I was able to help him in some way. And yeah, it was an amazing feeling. Now, I talk about this in part 8 because I want to tell you that as wonderful as it is to go out there and explore, as wonderful as it is to go see different worlds, as wonderful as it is to go flying over the ocean, to go flying through clouds, I mean, oh my gosh, there's so many planes of existence that are out there. If you want to hang around here, you can fly, you can walk through walls. There's so much that you can do. But what I want to share with you, what I want to tell you is that as you begin to venture out into the astral plane, as you begin to go out there, you might want to consider assisting others if you can in some way, especially with your guide's help and assistance as well. I mean, this, I think, is really important to make sure that your guides are involved in anything like this, But I think it could be an amazing experience for you to assist someone, especially if it means that they get to move on. But if anything else, just to help them to feel better. I mean, it's amazing. And then, some people are going through major tragedies, I'm sure, because perhaps they're bitter, perhaps they feel that they left too early, perhaps there's anger there. There's all kinds of things that being could be dealing with. And it's one of the things one of the reasons why I'm such an advocate for spirit beings. And I've talked about them before in previous episodes, and making sure that when we go out there to astral project, that at the least we have respect, that we don't have to fear them. They're not there to hurt us. Many times, maybe they just want to say hello. Maybe they just want to reach out because perhaps they're lonely. Perhaps they just want to say hi. Anyway, that's part 8. And I'm going to get into part 9. And I will continue to talk about different worlds. We'll get back into that, actually. But anyway, I wanted to just take a moment to talk about this. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming on another journey with me. And until next time, take care.